How did you find out that the victim was leaving town the following day?
I can't remember that good.
Was it from a blog?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, what blog was that?
The blog was Wendi.
Want the culpable parties held accountable for murdering the father of your children?
Absolutely. I'm grateful they're already in jail.
But not if it's your family.
It's not my family.
I mean, somebody hired him, right?
Not necessarily.
Somebody paid him.
I learned something this morning.
Yeah, me too. You didn't want him held accountable if it was your family members. Didn't you tell law enforcement that?
That's not what I told law enforcement.
What did you tell law enforcement?
I told them that the person who did this should be held responsible and that I had nothing to do with it.
Page 122, lines 7 through 12. If somebody tried to kill my ex-husband, they should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. The investigator says regardless of who it is, and your answer is, I mean, it would be different if I thought it were my brother.
But I don't think it was my family, is what I said.
Different now, isn't it?
No, it's not different. That's exactly
Different
what I
today,
said
isn't
right
it?
here. No, that's not
No
right.
questions.
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
Okay. How is everybody? I wanted to talk today about this mysterious statement that Georgia Cappleman made in Donna Adelson's hearing, pretrial hearing, which was about Wendi Adelson. And if you don't remember it, let's take a listen to it.
Wendi.
Hard to hear there. Wendi, Wendi, Wendi. It's all about you. That's what I heard. And we were all wondering what this was about. Why was Georgia Cappleman talking about Wendi Adelson at Donna Adelson's hearing? Now, the rumors I'm hearing is that they are all eyes on Wendi Adelson next, but they feel it's a weak case. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, so kind of interesting. And that's their next goal after Donna. Of course, Donna was supposed to be prosecuted in September. It was supposed to be going on right now, but got stalled when Dan Rashbaum, her lawyer, left the case. And because he had conflicts, meaning Charlie Adelson wouldn't give up his Sixth Amendment rights to be cross-examined by his old lawyer. So Dan Rashbaum represented, this is confusing, Charlie Adelson before Donna Adelson. And I got a comment that because he was Donna and Harvey's civil lawyer, that there could be complications with Charlie Adelson's, meaning he could get a successful appeal with his conviction. I can't believe that. I can't believe that if you hire a civil lawyer for things totally unrelated, but there's a million loopholes. These are very serious rights. They're constitutional rights. So maybe I'm curious who said that. And I never heard any legal commentary because about that while Charlie Adelson was being tried. Like, this is ridiculous. Dan Rashbaum was Harvey and Donna's lawyer, civil lawyer. I would think that would apply more if he was her criminal lawyer, but for kind of different matters. But I anyone's guess, if anyone's a lawyer out there and wants to weigh in, I'm very curious. So today I'm going to explain what I think Georgia Cappleman could have meant and what she may have been referring to when she said, Wendi, 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 it's all about you. But first, let's get into your comments. This is from Barry Manilow. Which always makes me laugh. 7. Roberta, this is part of that whole family narcissistic behavior. I guarantee Charlie said, go ahead and point the finger at me. I wasn't at the crime scene. They can't prove that I did it. It's all reverse psychology. Wendi will say, what did I make that joke? Why did I make that joke? If I was going to kill him. It's all tricky. She's diabolical. I'm surprised you didn't come to that conclusion. I think I did come to a similar conclusion. I think I've talked about this, that she all came to my feeling, P.S. Isom definitely dropped the ball. Now, I disagree that he dropped the ball. He went immediately from that interrogation to Wendi's divorce. I think, if anything, it was my feeling, it was the previous DAs, going by what I've read on the Justice for Dan website with their op-ed, that Harvey and Donna and basically the whole Adelson family was protected, and they were told not to go after them. The cops leaked a whole bunch of information to the press at one point. They were so frustrated. So I'm not sure if it was Isom really holding back the investigation. He certainly got her talking for a long period of time. And she's a lawyer. She could have walked out of that room at any minute, but she stayed and she kept talking. And it's certainly been the subject of conversation in this community for a long, long time. But I always thought that she came in with the idea like, this is what an innocent person would say. My brother did have this joke. Why would I make this joke? Why would I bring up this joke if I was going to kill him, if an innocent person would bring this up? This is just a joke. I thought it was to get out ahead of it and look like what an innocent person would say. My brother has this joke, but he would never do anything like this. So if people point the finger at my brother or me with this joke, no. Let me steer your mind to a different subject, like Jeffrey Lacasse, before you get going. That's what I always thought it was about. But obviously, Georgia Cappleman disagrees with me. You mentioned your brother in the first however many minutes of your interrogation. She thought Georgia Cappleman obviously believes that Wendi threw Charlie under the bus. I don't see it like that. I see it a little differently. Salgal Pal 1111 says, 11:1 says, I have a theory we are not hearing any Wendi on these tapes because they are saving them for her trial. Apparently, Georgia has with the rumor going around. I don't know if Georgia Cappleman has ever said it or it's always been assumed that she has more evidence that she's sitting on. Certainly, we saw some interesting evidence in Donna's trial that was new. William Thurlow 6675 says, I'm resigned to the fact that Wendi will never be arrested despite the substantial evidence. S.A. Jack Campbell, pathetic. He should ride off to his farm, embarrassing public official. That's really, I found this comment really interesting because I didn't feel that way at all listening to Jack Campbell. I don't know what Jack Campbell could have done. I don't know how he could have intervened. I really think I blame it on Dan Rashbaum, who should have said, no, Donna, I can't take this case. I can't represent two co-conspirators in a trial. Instead of saying, well, it's going to be a little complicated, but we can do it. He's so under Donna's thumb. That's how I see it. But I love hearing different points of view. I didn't get that feeling at all watching Jack Campbell. Granted, I don't live in Tallahassee. I don't have any more experience with Jack Campbell than the few interviews I've seen with him. And I couldn't disagree with much of what he said in that interview. Let me know how the rest of you guys think. If you really have it out for Jack Campbell, you blame him for creating this mess with the trial. And I'll mention it again. Should Donna Adelson be convicted, she will have to pay for all this cost and expense that went into preparing for a trial that never went forward, meaning the cost of transporting Katie, the cost of transporting Charlie. All those things will be put on her bill should she get convicted. And I think she will go to trial. I just think it's going to be a long while. And I also think that Alex Morris will ask for a plea deal for her, but I don't think he wants to go to trial with this. I think he will exit stage left or stage right, whichever side of the stage he wants to exit. He will exit before this. And I think we're going to have a whole new lawyer here. And I think it's going to be another year at least. That's my feeling. Maybe I'm too jaded from watching the NXIVM case from the early hearings on, when that thing was delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed. And even after they took plea deals, their sentencing was delayed and delayed and delayed for various reasons. None of them seem to want to even be sentenced after pleading guilty. So Keith Raniere's trial was certainly pushed back and back and back. So I always thought this was very quick for a trial of this profile. I was surprised, although Charlie did go to trial pretty quickly. So all in all, another year. We got a lot to talk about. I'm sure Donna will give us lots to talk about with her antics. I mean, if you've been keeping up True Lifestyles, I talked about her video, Donna getting issues with wanting to take a shower and the washing machine and ordering a book. So she ordered a physical book with staples that she wasn't allowed to have. And she's like, it says in the handbook. She's like, it says in the handbook I was allowed to have books. Are you going to reimburse me for my book? And they're like, excuse me, Mrs. Adelson, we meant you're allowed to have books downloaded onto your tablet. That's what we meant by you're allowed to have books. So I'm curious. I'm curious to what kind of books they're allowed to have. Usually there's also a jail library. You're allowed to order books onto your tablet, which is funny. It's something I don't know. I don't relate to Donna in any way, but that I did relate to. So moving along, what I was talking about, I thought was interesting. So the one time that Wendi Adelson, so moving back to the subject of this episode, the one time that Wendi Adelson was really questioned, it was by Chris DeCoste in Sigfredo and Catherine McManama's trial, meaning Sigfredo Garcia and Catherine McManama's trial. And it was a brutal cross-examination. So here Wendi came and testified for the prosecution. And afterwards, Chris DeCoste, who super strong defense attorney, questioned Wendi. And let's just take a listen to the beginning of it together, shall we?
Please be seated. We're ready to continue with the testimony. Ms. Cappleman, you may continue with your direct if necessary.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, I'm going to approach you with what I marked as State's Exhibit 64.
Oh, darn it. Let me just move ahead because this ends very, 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 very quickly.
Ms. Adelson, this is all about you, isn't it?
Excuse me?
This is all about you, right?
I was called to be a witness and I'm testifying, so I don't understand the question. Is it a question?
It's about
So could that have been the inspiration for Wendi, Wendi, Wendi? It's all about you. That's the first line of his cross-examination. Let's listen again, shall we? Go back.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Ms. Adelson, this is all about you, isn't it?
Excuse me?
This is all about you, right?
I was called to be a witness and I'm testifying, so I don't understand the question. Is it a question?
There's about 100 people in this courtroom, right?
There are people in the courtroom.
Possibly thousands watching, right?
I have no idea who's watching.
There she's doing that thing again. There's about 100 people in the courtroom. There are people in the courtroom. I'm not going to qualify it with a number. Did you vomit on the table? Yes, I threw up. I'm going to try to get control through language of this cross-examination. What do you guys think? Do you think that's what Georgia Cappleman was thinking of? This one time where Wendi really had to face a brutal, the closest thing she's had to a trial. I know that Georgia Cappleman has given her some intense questionings on the stand. But this is the first time I've ever, I really, when I think of Wendi Adelson answering tough questions, I think about this cross-examination. Curious to know your thoughts.
It's all because of your failed marriage, right?
I disagree with that.
You disagree that your ex-husband is dead because of your family.
Yes, I disagree.
These jurors are here for weeks doing their civic duty because of your marriage, right?
No.
Katie's going through this ordeal because of that marriage, right?
No.
Dan Markel's parents are going through absolute misery because of your failed marriage. Isn't that right?
No, that's incorrect.
Well, let's talk about the marriage. You and Professor Markel, you met when you were in law school. You told that to Ms. Cappleman. And it was a whirlwind romance, right? Right?
It was not a whirlwind romance, no.
It led to a wedding, February 26th of 2006. You had a big wedding in Boca Raton, right?
Did we get married on February 26, 2006? Is that the question? Yes,
In Boca Raton.
in Boca Raton, Florida.
And it wasn't a small wedding, it was a big wedding.
There were many people in attendance.
All right, in this marriage, it led to 2 children, right? Your 2 boys.
Are you asking me if I have 2 boys?
Yes.
Yes.
And Professor Markel, he was a great father, wasn't he?
He was a very good father, yes.
Those boys were his world, right?
As well as his work, yes.
And they adored him too, didn't they?
Absolutely.
Now, this marriage started to fall apart, right?
It did.
But there were problems from the very beginning, weren't there? Right?
Are you asking me, what is the very beginning? The very beginning of when we got married?
Literally at the wedding.
There were problems before we got married.
All right, so at the wedding, and the government asked you about kosher at law, right?
About what, I'm sorry?
Keeping kosher,
About keeping kosher, yes.
right?
The government
And your
asked.
wedding, at your wedding was the
I love that. He says kosher with a Boston accent. Kosher law. Kosher law. It's like my favorite thing. I love a Boston accent. I gotta just go back and hear it again.
Keeping kosher, yes.
right?
The government
And your
Oh, no,
wedding.
wait. Oh, wait. Too soon.
married.
All right, so at the wedding, and the government asked you about kosher at law, right?
About what, I'm sorry?
Keeping kosher,
About keeping kosher, yes.
right?
The government
And your
asked.
wedding, at your wedding was the groom's family, the Markel family, and they are more strict than your family and friends about keeping kosher.
They do not keep kosher.
Wasn't that one of the problems in your marriage, that Professor Markel was very insistent about keeping kosher?
About his kosher rules, but those are different than his family's.
So you're saying that it wasn't a problem at the wedding, that there were people from the groom's side of the family that were there that strictly keep kosher, that they were told that it was going to be kosher food, but it actually wasn't?
So there was a misunderstanding about whether the food was going to be kosher style or more in adherence with kosher law. There was a miscommunication about that.
So you had people that strictly keep kosher eating non-kosher food, which is a big deal.
That actually is not what happened. You had, Danny was upset that it was kosher style and not strictly adhering to kosher law. So he was disappointed.
So there's problems.
Okay, so let's go over this one more time. My understanding is that Wendi had a very fancy wedding. Kosher style was a phrase made up and then adopted. Thank you to the listener who sent me. I think she sent me some Jewish style delicatessens that use the word kosher style. So they're not necessarily kosher, but it's like deli food. So it's like Nathan's hot dogs, deli food, things that you wouldn't expect to see at a wedding. We're going to have pastrami sandwiches on rye and some pickles and I don't know what else. Kosher style. I mean, it wouldn't, it's, to explain kosher isn't, it's like saying we're going to have kosher people are going to be dealt with just like vegetarians. We're just going to have vegetarian food, but a lot of meat. I mean, you just couldn't serve kosher style food at a formal wedding. It just wouldn't. It's such a lie. It's such a provable lie. It's so ridiculous that it just drives me totally crazy. I know I've been over this, but this is for the new people listening. This is a ridiculous lie thought up on the fly.
Problems right from the beginning.
That was a problem at our wedding. Yeah.
Fast forward now to September 10th, 2012. Professor Markel, he's away on a business trip, right?
Yes.
He's in New York City at New York University, right?
I believe so. Yes.
And he's doing a presentation.
I don't know what he was doing.
Your husband at the time was in New York to give a presentation. You knew that, right?
I knew he was in New York. I didn't know if he was attending a conference or giving a presentation, but he was in New York for work.
Now, you had not communicated with him for 2 days.
I really don't remember.
You text him at around 2:30 in the afternoon, right? Right before he's about to do the presentation.
I really don't remember.
But you do remember dropping the bomb on him, don't you? Telling him that you wanted a divorce.
So I did not drop a bomb on.
See, DeCoste has her number. She purposely planned when she was going to call him, when she was going to tell him. And I believe that she pushed him. What I hear is that Dan really did say you'll never see your kids again. Whether that was reported by Wendi, I don't think she made it up. I think she pushed her to that. She pushed him to that level of craziness, frankly. But I think she planned on the time that she was going to do it. Where would it be the most painful? How could I do this in the most painful way? Right before he gives a presentation, because you did drop the bomb on him. I don't remember what I did. You remember, Wendi. You remember when you did it. That's my feeling on it.
On him. We'd been in therapy for several months beforehand where I told him several times I wanted a divorce.
You say it's not a bomb, but you agree with me that he begged you to reconsider.
He was very upset and yes, wanted me to reconsider, but
in that phone call, he's begging you to reconsider. Please don't leave. Please don't break up our family, right?
he was very upset, yes.
And he was heartbroken. I mean, upset indicates that there was anger. What he was heartbroken, right?
That I decided to divorce him after telling him I would, yes.
Despite being at NYU for a presentation, he rushes home. He gets on the next flight. right?
I honestly don't remember if he got on the next flight, but he did come home quickly.
2:30, he finds out in New York. By 11 p.m., he's walking in the door to your old house at Trescott Drive, right?
I don't know.
But you do know that when he walks in the house, what he finds. You know that, right?
Yes, I left him the papers.
You left the divorce papers on the bed, right?
Yes,
Half the furniture was gone.
half the furniture was not gone.
A good amount of his stuff was gone.
Nothing of his was gone.
The boys' stuff was gone, right?
Some of the boys' things were gone. I'd taken enough so that I had for the boys, but no.
You were gone.
So Glitter brings up a point here. Also, in this case, nobody is objective, right? Dan was kind of an a-hole, or could be kind of an a-hole. His students and coworkers disliked him a lot. He didn't deserve this, but he wasn't a perfect person, right? Because he died, right? So, when I was talking to DA John Lewin, he said, you can't pick your victims. I was talking about Susan Berman and the Robert Durst trial, and I said, there's a lot of information, her sending her food back, being extremely difficult and phobic, that made me feel alienated from her. And he said, look, victims are not chosen because they're perfect people. And there's a lot of, because Wendi is so hateable, some of the richness of this case gets kind of dialed down to all Dan Markel was all good and Wendi was all bad. And it's a lot more, there's a lot more gray and things are more complicated than that. So we kind of, the best way to try to see the case, although in this case, it's hard because in this case, I find it hard. These are accused, this is a murder for hire case, and we have to put ourselves in the viewpoint of the accused murderers, and I find that very difficult. But with this stuff, I'm talking about Wendi and Dan Markel's marriage. Let's not forget that it does take two people to have a marriage. Why she ever married him if you don't want to keep kosher, which is such a hard thing to do. It's not like just being vegetarian. It's very involved and very difficult. Not going to go over it again, but if you heard my episode where my boyfriend had kosher friends over for the Super Bowl, and we just got kosher pizza, but then we had to get paper plates and plastic forks and plastic glasses because all our stuff had been used with milk and meat. We couldn't put it back in the oven because that would make it to warm up the pizza because that would make it non-kosher. It's involved. Why would you do that? Why would you go on J-date and marry someone interested in keeping kosher? I understand he got more and more faithful as their marriage went on. And that's something to be discussed too. Why that happened is something I've been thinking about. I would think this would be extremely stressful dealing with the stresses between the families, between the Markels and the Adelsons, and dealing with Wendi's personality would be very stressful.
I was gone, yes.
And so were his boys.
His boys were not gone. He saw them the next day, and they would not have been awake if he's coming home at 11 p.m.
Let's stay on topic here.
I'd
When
love
he
to stay on
walks in the
topic.
when he walks in the door, the boys are not in the house, right?
Correct.
And you did not tell Professor Markel where you were taking the boys. He may have seen them the next day, but you did not let him know where you were going to be staying with his boys.
With our boys? Yes.
So you agree with me that they're also his.
Of course they're his.
And he should be entitled to know where his wife is taking his children.
Absolutely.
That's not all you took, is it?
Excuse me?
You two had a
So I understand this is also a total lie. He didn't know where she was. He didn't know where his kids were after she took them. Which is odd because even if, so what I meant was, and I don't know if I explained myself well, is there's no perfect victim. There are no perfect people. We're all imperfect. I hope I explained myself well. So I don't understand the fantasy that you would have to be in to take your kids and hide them and not tell Dan Markel, your husband, or your ex-husband, or your soon-to-be ex-husband, where they are, and think that you could get away with that. Like, I'll just get them down to Miami and then he won't come after them, or he won't want to be with them, or knowing how involved Dan Markel was with his kids. I don't understand the mentality. It's like, if I do it, if I run fast enough and he doesn't know for a little while, I won't have to bring them back. Apparently he had to threaten using the law, which is the way these lawyers argue, using the law, I guess. But I don't understand the fantasy of it. And it's the same fantasy of, I'm going to use my girlfriend or ex-girlfriend, Katie McManawa, as the middle woman, and it's not going to come back to me. I think Charlie Adelson had a warped idea of what evidence is and what could be proved in court. And I think that's evident by the jailhouse calls. And also the undercover wiretap with Charlie Adelson and Katie, where he's like, you could be in a car, and if your DNA was left in the car, that doesn't prove you robbed the bank. Well, if you're caught on video, yes. If you're caught, if you make certain patterns, yes. The bar of evidence it's high in a criminal case, but it's not that high, Charlie Adelson. I think he had a warped idea of how high what beyond a reasonable doubt means. It doesn't mean beyond any doubt, Charlie Adelson.
A joint checking account at Schwab, right?
We did.
And you went into that account before you dropped the bomb, and you took out half of that account, right?
Correct.
Roughly $350,000.
Half, yes. Of our joint account.
$350,000.
I don't remember the amount, but yes.
You know that it was in the hundreds of thousands.
I really don't remember the amount, sir.
Is it that insignificant of a sum to you that you
I'm
don't
not saying
remember?
it's an insignificant sum. I'm saying I can't attest to the amount that was there.
I'm going to tone it down. You were unhappy in the marriage, right?
That's why I got divorced, yes.
And it happens. Marriages fall apart, right?
Yes.
But you complained constantly about it, didn't you?
No, I don't think I complained constantly.
To anyone that would listen.
No, that's not true.
You agree with me that you complained to the one person that would actually do something about it.
I don't understand what you're asking.
Your big brother, Charles Adelson, you complained to him about how bad Professor Markel was and how much you hated him and didn't want to be in a marriage with him.
I definitely talked to my brother about how unhappy I was in my marriage. If that's the question, then yes. Is that the question?
Yes, that is a question. You talked to your brother, Charles Adelson, about how bad your marriage was.
I did, yes.
Let's talk about it. Government asked you about Charles Adelson. He's an intelligent guy, right?
He is smart.
Yeah. He's both book smart and street smart, right?
I would say so.
You would say that he's a talker.
He does like to talk.
He's got the gift of gab, so to speak.
I wouldn't say he's the gift of gab, but he does talk.
He knows what to say in the moment.
I wouldn't say that's true either.
I wouldn't say that's true. He knows what to say in the moment. Yeah, I think he does. I think that's a good assessment there. I think I'm going to take a short break. This is a good time to just been using my Maestro song. I think I may not play the whole thing, but I'll play some of it. Take a quick break while they're talking about Charlie. When we get back, talking about Georgia Cappleman today. If you're just tuning in, said Wendi, Wendi, Wendi. We're listening to the It's All About You at Donna Adelson's hearing. And we're listening to the cross-examination of Wendi Adelson in Sigfredo Garcia and Catherine McManawa's trial, which began with, "It's all about you, isn't it, Ms. Adelson?" Stay tuned. I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
I don't know. You just put it in and just kind of go to town and talk about yourself.
Stop the murder trial with a shake on my head. Watch the Lovelace, Georgia. You would have thought they were made of lead. Underestimate me and you'll see what you get. Charlie's never wrong because Charlie's always right. I'm not myself as I go to town. Leave them unsatisfied, but they would still come round. I got staple money in my safe, I'm ready to spend. But that was all before I got done for murder. Now I'm doing loud while in the state pen. I'm the maestro. It's spelled out on the back of my Ferrari. I'm the maestro. I ordered the paella. Don't forget the calamari. Oh, got staple money in my safe, I'm ready to spend. But that was all before I got done for murder. Now I'm doing L-pop in the state pen. I'm mad at the jury for not seeing reasonable doubt. Who hasn't been? It started on the lap and keeps payment plan for a set amount. Asked the gang members why they were so sensitive to my feelings. Georgia mesmerized the jury. You would have thought she was Houdini. I'm the maestro. It's spelled out on the back of my Ferrari. I'm the maestro. I ordered the paella. Don't forget the calamari. I'm the maestro. It's spelled out on the back of my Ferrari. I'm the maestro. I ordered the paella. Don't forget the calamari. I'm all down with the maestro. I'm the maestro. I'm the maestro. I'm the maestro.
Okay, we're back. Once he starts playing some of it, it's like, oh well. Too long, right? A little bit too long break there, but okay. Thanks for sticking with me. If you're just tuning in, we're listening to Wendi Adelson's cross-examination in Katie McBanoa and Sigfredo Garcia's trial, done by Chris DeCoste.
You would say, though, that he is. Now, you were asked questions about, drug purchasing and stuff like that. You'd agree with me that he's also street smart.
I mean, I think he has common sense.
And that he lives life to a certain extent on both sides of the track. During the day, he's doing periodontal work, whatever that is, crowns, root canals, whatever that is. He's doing that during the day. At night, he's out with friends, he's buying drugs. He's living life on both sides of the track.
I don't know about that he's out buying drugs.
Now, let's talk for a second about WhatsApp. And as an aside here for a second, the government asked you the question if you used WhatsApp, right? You remember that?
I remember them asking me, yes.
On the day that Professor Markell was killed, you went in for the interview, right?
I talked to the police.
And you also gave them your phone for them to inspect.
Absolutely.
So the determination of what, if any, WhatsApp was being used, they would have from the download they did that day of your phone.
Sure.
Now, would you be surprised to learn that your brother used WhatsApp?
No.
You would agree with me that WhatsApp, and you explained it well, is end-to-end encryption.
Correct.
In your lay opinion, if you can explain to the jurors, just in case they don't know, what that means.
I know that it's something we use at my work because essentially it has the ability to keep things more private. I also know that nothing's actually private and that anyone who wants to can uncode the messages. So that's what we tell people at our work.
So the thought is with WhatsApp, if I use my phone and I call somebody, the call could be listened to. If I text somebody, it's recordable, right?
I think so.
But with WhatsApp, you can send messages or have phone calls where there's no record of it.
I don't think that's true. I think there is still a record of it.
But the belief and the thought, I'll withdraw that question. Your lay understanding, though, is that the footprint that it leaves is much less than that of normal communications.
I think it's different, but I think it still leaves a digital footprint that's easily uncodable.
If you were to send a WhatsApp message to Ms. Cappleman, it would show that a message was sent, but it would be hard to get what the content of the message is.
I don't think that's true.
All right. Let's.
Yeah, I believe once you delete them on those encrypted devices, it's impossible to get back. That's my understanding. What is your understanding of it?
Let's talk about your brother's jokes now. You don't deny that he joked about hiring a hitman.
He did.
You don't deny that he repeated this joke.
He did.
And he made this joke right before a hitman murdered Professor Markel.
I don't know that to be true.
Okay. He made the joke right before, and I'll leave out the hitman part, Professor Markel was killed.
He made the joke the morning that I talked to him.
Can you think of one?
All I see is Duper's delight. And the head tilt she does, I know that, I guess when someone's telling me how to pose for photographs, they tell you to tilt your head. I don't know. And I think it's also to seem sincere with a jury, tilt your head. So I think it's vanity and way to kind of fake sincerity, but she just seems so pleased with the fact that they could all make this joke and the TV could be a code for this murder. And that she gets to show that she's smarter than all of them because they still haven't caught her yet. The small people are going down, but the big people are still, at this time, no one was caught. Not Charlie, no one, believe, in this first trial.
One person in this world that would actually hire two people to go kill Professor Markel other than your family?
Your Honor.
Ms. Adelson, please answer. Please
I'd
address
love
me and
to.
answer the
It
question.
calls for an unbelievable amount of speculation. I mean, I'm responsible for coming up with, that's the prosecutor's duty, no, to figure out who's responsible.
You just said a moment ago that you disagree that hitmen killed Professor Markel. That's what you said, right? So my question to you is, if you're able to say, well, it wasn't hitmen, then who? Tell this jury, who on this planet would have wanted to kill Professor Markel?
I have no idea.
All right, let's get into that a little bit. But I want to make sure that's clear. This joke is made right before Professor Markel is murdered, right?
The joke was made many times.
It was made right before Professor Markel was murdered. Yes or no?
Yes.
July 18, 2014, you're interviewed and you make a statement saying, I knew this would happen. You said that, right?
I did.
All right. Now I want to talk about your knowledge and your belief on this. You're a smart person, right?
How am I supposed to answer that?
Well, let's go through your resume. You went to Brandeis University, right?
I did.
You graduated magna cum laude.
I did.
If you could explain to the jury what that means.
It means I studied a lot and got good grades.
All right. It means, and to speak, I'm from the Northeast. My Boston accent may give it away. It means you're wicked smart, right?
That's very
You had a
nice.
high
Thank you.
GPA, a very high GPA.
I work hard.
You also went and you got a master's degree from the University of Cambridge.
I did.
You were a Gates Scholar.
I was.
You then go to the University of Miami School of Law, which is a top tier law school, tier 1, right?
Okay.
Right? We're talking about your level of intelligence. You went to the University of Miami Law School, right?
I did, yes.
You also clerked at the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, right?
I did.
Now, to get a clerkship out of law school, it's a very difficult thing to do, right?
It's challenging.
You have to have top grades. You have to go through a rigorous selection process, right?
Yes.
You then become a professor at the Florida State University College of Law, right?
Yes.
You're also a published author, right?
Now you're just embarrassing me.
So disingenuous. Now you're just embarrassing me. She loves this. I mean, those accomplishments are nothing to sneeze at. Let's be fair. But what I'm thinking, or what I'm asking myself listening to this, is did all that pressure eventually make Wendi crazy? I mean, I think my feeling is that she was born without any empathy, but I'm not talking about her empathy. I'm talking about what Jeffrey Lacasse talks about, is that drinking her dinner, being a mess, emotional mess, having to control. getting sick to her stomach easily? Did she burn out with all that high pressure for years and years and years? I don't know. Something to think about. I mean, the way Jeffrey Lacasse describes her is not functioning too well after her divorce from Dan Markel. Or was it the fear of being exposed as not perfect? Right? The worst thing you can do to Wendi Adelson is point out that she's not perfect in those filings was the mask slipping. She need that mask of perfection. Was that what was making her crazy? It's not a healthy way to live.
Why?
Meaning drinking your dinner, sleeping with multiple people, kind of really having this kind of messy personal life.
Are you embarrassed that you're a published author?
I don't like talking about myself.
Is it because the book that you wrote discredited Tallahassee and spoke ill of it?
The book did not discredit Tallahassee. It wasn't about Tallahassee.
Let's stay on topic and ask a question again with everything that we just went through. You're a smart woman, right?
I am a smart woman.
There's information about this case everywhere. You'd agree with me on that, right?
I'd been advised by my lawyer not to read it.
All right. Now, we're not talking about reading stuff. There's podcasts,
Also not to listen.
TV shows,
Also not to watch.
articles.
Don't read.
And so you've made the decision. Now, you're a lawyer yourself too, right?
I am.
And you made the decision, I'm not going to look at any of this stuff.
Correct.
I don't want to know what happened to the father of my 2 children.
Not I don't want to know what happened.
How can you say you love those boys if you don't care who killed the father that they loved?
Of course I care who killed the father that they loved.
Then why won't you look at the stuff?
I've been advised not to.
Are you afraid that when you look at it, you're going to realize that your brother did this?
I am not afraid of that.
Now, of course, you've, and we won't get into privileged communications, but you've spoken to your lawyer about the case.
How are we not getting into privileged communications? Yes, I've spoken to my lawyer about the case.
You're very intelligent. You have one of the top defense attorneys in the country, former federal prosecutor, John Lower, right there in the blue suit, right?
He is my attorney.
You're telling me with all of this at your disposal, your intelligence, his experience, and all this information, that you don't care to find out who it is that killed Professor Markel?
This is not that I don't care to find out. My job is to take care of those boys, and that is what I do. I don't see how it helps take care of them to go reading and watching and soaking up all of the horrible information that's out there.
You don't realize that you could be helpful in finally untangling this to give this jury the truth about what happened to Professor Markel?
I have been nothing but helpful since this started.
To what happened to their son? By you looking at it, you are at the center of all this, but you won't look at anything to help in the process.
I've done nothing but help in this process.
You came here and testified.
I came here.
I've done nothing to help. My way of helping was to talk for 6 hours and then never talk, lawyer up and never talk to prosecution again. That's my way of helping. DeCosta's got her number. So if you're just tuning in, we're listening to Catherine McBanoa's lawyer, meaning the defense lawyer, Chris DeCoste, cross-examined Wendi Adelson.
Here and testified. I spoke to the police for 6 hours without anyone present. I signed over my cell phone, my car, my house, everything, my computer. What else do I?
That was all to protect yourself, Wendi. That wasn't to help find Dan Markel's killer. It was to absolve yourself. Get you, right? How many times did you ask whether you were a suspect or not? That wasn't helping.
I have or know that you haven't seen.
You came here because you were subpoenaed and had no choice,
Correct.
right?
This is not fun. I
You've
would not do this by choice.
You've been inconvenienced.
I've not been inconvenienced.
Professor Markel was shot in the head.
I'm not complaining about being here. This is my duty. I'm here.
We'll get back to you complaining about being here.
It's my duty. It's a duty that I had to be subpoenaed to do. I feel so strongly in doing my duty. I had to be subpoenaed to do it. He's got her number of 50 different million ways What did Liz say in the chat? If I were a chocolate, I would eat myself. I'm Wendi Adelson. Funny.
Do you honestly expect this jury to believe that you haven't confronted your brother about all of this?
Yes, I do.
Yes, you did confront him?
Yes, I do expect them to believe that I did not confront my brother because I didn't.
Or maybe you don't need to because you know the truth in this case. You already know it. That he went behind your back, right?
Did not happen.
Just like he has done with past boyfriends. He's done that in the past where he's gone behind your back when you were having problems in a relationship and dealt with it himself.
No.
Ms. Adelson, you understand that until you expose your brother what he did, that everybody's going to consider you as guilty. You understand that, right?
What is the question that you're asking me?
You understand that until you expose your brother and explain what he did, that he went behind everybody's back, that he hired a hitman to murder your ex-husband, you'll remain guilty in the eyes of the world.
I can't speak to the eyes of the world. I can only know that I have done nothing wrong.
Or maybe you are guilty.
I am not guilty.
So a witness in this case, and I'm not going to get into their testimony, but one of the hitmen, the convicted hitman, implicates you. On July 17, 2014, the day before the murder, the morning before, he says that you were walking on Trescott with the two boys, that you walked down the driveway and into the house.
That never happened.
Right, because Professor Markell, I apologize, Professor Markell, he had the kids. Based on the way that your guy's schedule was, on that day, he would have had the children in the morning, and you're going through such a bad divorce, you wouldn't be at his house, right?
I wouldn't be at his house anyway, but not because we were going through a bad divorce. At that time, things were pretty copacetic.
All right, so we're coming back to maybe you do know, or maybe you were involved.
Excuse me? What's the question that you're asking me?
I'm giving you a header of what we're talking about so that it will ease you in the question, okay? I'm just telling you what the topic that we're on, so we'll get to a question. Now, the government...
Excuse me? She gets snarky, but she doesn't get offended. Someone else would be really super offended if they were accused of murder. Let's listen to that again, shall we? She gets snarky. That's the best way to say it.
Professor Markell, he had the kids. Based on the way that your guy's schedule was, on that day, he would have had the children in the morning, and you're going through such a bad divorce, you wouldn't be at his house, right?
I wouldn't be at his house anyway, but not because we were going through a bad divorce. At that time, things were pretty copacetic.
All right, so we're coming back to maybe you do know, or maybe you were involved.
Excuse me? What's the question that you're asking me?
I'm giving you a header of what we're talking about so that it will ease you in the question, okay? I'm just telling you what the...
An innocent person would be appalled, furious. What's the question? What's the question?
Topic that we're on, so we'll get to a question. Now, the government asked you about a time that you met Miss Magbanua. It was actually spring break of March 2014, right?
I believe so.
You went down to Miami, you stayed with your brother Charles.
I went down to Fort Lauderdale after being in Immokalee and stayed with my brother.
You then went to Miami Beach to Yardbird and had dinner outside with your boyfriend at the time, or who you were dating, Jeffrey Lacasse. Catherine McBanwell was there, and your brother Charles Adelson, and you all ate outside, right?
We did.
And that's on Miami Beach, not in Fort Lauderdale.
Correct.
Now, just for context, Jeffrey Lacasse, he was also an FSU professor, not at the law school, but an FSU professor. Nice guy, right?
I don't think so now.
Now, you deny.
Isn't it interesting that Jeffrey Lacasse, I know he's called Lacoste by Georgia Cappleman and Chris DeCoste. It's called Lacasse, became the hated person by Wendi and Donna. I mean, if you listen to the Jailhouse Calls with Charlie, Donna talks about Jeffrey Lacasse on the stand being red and untrustworthy, exactly the opposite of what he was. It's about the best witness you'll ever get. most trustworthy, honest, that the words just flow from him, unrehearsed. He admits his own faults. He admits his own shortcomings, exactly what you want as a witness. That is the definition of a great witness. And Donna and Charlie are sitting there talking about how great June was as a witness, the most withholding, making goo-goo eyes at Charlie Adelson, was withholding, can barely get the words out of her mouth. Have you ever seen her testimony in some of these trials? So did you say, so you went to see Donna, were her eyes red, and I think so. Did she complain about not being able to sleep? I don't remember. Georgia's like really soft on her. She's like, well, it's in your interview. Well, that's when I was mad at Charlie. Did she say that Dan Markel was haunting her from the grave? Because for Donna, everything is a curse, some kind of supernatural power that happens from the outside, never her own fault. Right? No one can take responsibility in this family. So Jeffrey Lacasse became, after they got rid of Dan Markel, ended his life, murdered him, Jeffrey Lacasse became his substitute, although I don't think they ever hated him with the same vitriol that they hated Dan Markel. But he will be the most important witness should Wendi Adelson ever come to trial. Jeffrey Lacasse, most important witness in my view, against her. He saw everything.
I'm assuming that on July 13, 2014, you told Jeffrey Lacasse that Charles looked into hiring a hitman. You deny that, or you admit that?
I deny that.
And that you told him that Charles looked into hiring a hitman back in September of 2013.
Thank you, Liz Graham, for the super chat. My apologies. Just get this off. I appreciate it.
That never happened.
Which would have been months before your brother even met Catherine McBannel.
I don't remember when they met.
Letting you know the topic we're on, we're talking about you being involved. That same week, earlier in the week, you sent an email. We're talking about the week of the murder now, not spring break, the week of the murder, not Yardbird, the week of the murder. You sent an email to Jeffrey Lacasse saying that you wanted to break up, that you needed space, right?
I did.
Sent him a long email, stay away, we're broken up, right?
I did.
You knew that on July 18, 2014, Jeffrey Lacasse was leaving town to go on a trip, right?
I knew he was leaving at some point that week. I don't remember when.
You knew that he was leaving on the same day of the murder at the same exact time as the murder.
I don't think I did.
11 a.m. on July 18, 2014.
I don't think I knew when he was leaving town.
It's a good way to put the blame onto somebody else. You'd agree on that, right? If it happened, it would have been a good way to put the blame on somebody else.
I have no idea when he was going to leave town.
Your interview, July 18, 2014, you said, my brother, he joked about hiring a hitman. Perhaps that was you just planting a seed to divert the attention of law enforcement away from you.
It was not.
Let's jump off topic right now and talk about your boys' names. That in the time after the murder, you changed their last names from Markel to Adelson, right?
A year later, yes.
Why?
I was scared
Of what?
of someone coming to attack them.
Someone coming to attack them. It's so ridiculous. And she starts this narrative in the police station. Amanda Knox did the same thing. It could have been me. It could have been me. Always putting herself as the center of attention. They could be coming after me. I'm not sure who the killer is. Just look in the mirror. Wendi, you and your whole family, in my opinion. I just feel sorry for her children. I feel eventually they're going to wake up. There's a case that I often talk about in relation to this case that I've covered. So the murder for hire, Maria Marshall, excuse me, done by her husband, Robert Marshall. And she had 3 boys. They had 3 boys together. And the youngest one, they all went to the trial, and the youngest one stuck by the father while the middle and oldest son, after the trial, would have nothing to do with him. And I was curious on Donna's list of visitors. So when you have a visitors list, I don't think I made this clear enough what a visitors list is. So if you have visitors in a jail, they have to be on the visitors list. And she made this list right before her birthday. Possibly, I argued, anticipating or posited that possibly she was doing this thinking maybe she'd get a surprise visit from her husband, Ben, Ronan, Bree, Annie Cunningham, her friend, someone. We can take a look at that list real quick. And my understanding, what I've heard, is that she hasn't gotten any prison visits. That didn't happen. So here's a list: Bree, Ronan, Annie, Ben. But where is the next page? Where's Lincoln? Her other grandson. Is one of them waking up? Is one of them starting to look at this? Someone's starting to question? Seems a little young to start to question, but they're very precocious kids.
So it's a year later, you won't look at anything because you don't want to know what's going on in the case. And the thought is, well, they're going to be protected if they have my last name and not Markel, right?
Yes.
Now, years later, arrests are made. It's clear who committed the murder, Sigfredo Garcia Luis Rivera. The Adelson name has been dragged through the mud. Why haven't you continued to protect your boys and changed the name back?
I will be changing. I'm not going to change the name back. I don't think that will help. One day I'll change all of our names.
The government asked you about immunities.
When is this going to happen? When is this going to happen? This is 2019, maybe earlier. When's that name change going to happen? I think she just says whatever is on the top of her head. It's absurd. Absurd.
So let's get into that.
And by the way, I'm really rusty at doing this live streaming. Guys, Liz Graham said, great stream. Great stream. Thanks. Thank you, Liz Graham. Someday I'll get this right. Someday I'll get this live streaming thing right.
You explained that as an attorney, you understand that when the government gives a subpoena for somebody to testify, that it conveys immunity, right?
That's my understanding. My knowledge of criminal law dates back to 2003 when I took a semester in law school. So forgive me.
Graduated law school, right?
This isn't my area of law.
When you clerked on the 11th Circuit, it was with Judge Jordan, right?
I did immigration appeals.
Yeah, but you still dealt with criminal stuff as well, too.
Very little.
So your understanding, though, is it doesn't mean they can't arrest you. They just can't use what you say here against you later on. So you're protected.
Correct.
And you needed that to testify, right?
It's just given to testify. It's not a question of whether I needed it. It comes with testifying.
You fear being charged by them. So you need to have that protection of
I
your words.
don't fear being charged for a crime I didn't commit. No.
Now, y'all had this nice exchange where it was pleasant, but there's actually tension between you and this office, right?
No.
They recently had your brother, Charles Adelson, arrested, and he's in custody, right?
Correct.
For first-degree murder.
Correct.
And there's no tension?
It's very uncomfortable to be here. It's hard to tell where the tension is coming from.
They've discussed your involvement in this case. They insinuated it on the direct examination. There's no tension?
Lots of media insinuates that I did something I didn't do too. I can't feel tension towards every person in the world.
That's funny. I thought you didn't look at anything.
I don't, that's why.
But you know that
Right. How do you know it if you don't read it? Wendi, it's so absurd. And here, this is where Krista Koss says to her, now you're not guilty. Something very similarly to what Donna says, you're not guilty. You're going to maintain that you're not guilty. Do you remember that? Now you're not guilty. Now that you're here, you're not guilty.
you know about the media, but you don't know about the media?
I know about the media because it keeps me from employment. It keeps me from lots of things in my life. I'm aware of what's there, but I don't read the minutia so I can sleep at night.
Ms. Adelson, 5 minutes ago, you said you don't look at any of that stuff.
I
Now I
don't
asked you a
look at
question.
it.
Let me finish.
Sure.
5 minutes ago, you say you don't look at any of that stuff. Now I ask you a question, you say you look at stuff.
That's not actually what I said. I said I'm aware that it exists, but I don't read it. I don't listen to it.
Then how do you know that they're bashing you?
You just told me they are.
I did?
Yeah.
How about this? We'll come back to it. You can think up a better answer, okay?
I'm not thinking up an answer. I'm telling you the truth. I'm sorry if you don't want to listen to it.
Your basic understanding of criminal law, though, you know that if the defense gives you a subpoena, you get no immunity.
Correct.
Correction, improper question.
I'm not going beyond that question.
All right, that's the only question you can ask on that.
If I give you a subpoena, you don't get immunity, right?
Correct.
Let's talk about your parents. The government asked you about your mother and father, Donna and Harvey, right? The government could do the same and subpoena them so that this jury can watch them get questioned, not nicely how Ms. Cappleman questioned you, but to be cross-examined by me.
Jack,
Objection. And that was the plan. They were subpoenaed by the prosecution in Charlie Adelson's trial, and they said if they testified, they would plead the fifth. That's why it never happened.
correction, improper question.
I'm going to sustain that. Ask a different question.
Are your parents here in Tallahassee right now?
No.
Are they back in Miami?
Yes.
Do they have any plans of coming here this week or next?
I don't think so.
No. Your family dynamic. It is your mother and father, Harvey and Donna. There's you, you're the youngest, Charles, and then the oldest, Robert. Right?
Correct.
And he's a doctor up in New York.
Correct.
Now, the government asked you about the relationship, and you're like, we don't talk much. It's actually much deeper than that with Robert, isn't it?
We don't talk
At all.
at all.
And the reason is because your parents were so difficult about the woman that is now his wife.
That is not the reason why we don't talk.
I'm not talking about the reason why you don't talk. Let me clarify it. The reason why your parents don't talk to him.
That's not the reason why they don't talk with him.
Are you saying to this jury that there wasn't a problem where they outright objected to his marriage of a woman that was not of the Jewish faith?
That was initially what happened. And then there was actually a beautiful reconciliation, and they're very happy about the marriage.
Robert and his wife, not your family.
Robert and his wife and our family were very happy about Robert's marriage.
So,
Right. Eventually. So that is true. I think that is actually the narrative. My understanding is that it went sour when Robert started saying, hey, why isn't anyone interested in how Dan Markel was killed? And he figured it out, and that's why none of them talk. No one was interested like he was in solving this murder, strangely. No one was interested in asking the questions because, of course, they didn't want to ask the questions because they knew the answer. They did it. He was stunned by their lack of curiosity as to what happened to Dan Markel.
so what happens is that Robert is in love with a woman. Your parents object. He breaks up with her and then dates a Jewish woman, right?
And then they got married and divorced, and then he got back together with the person he wanted to be married to. Yes.
With his true love.
Yes.
But there was a lot of tension in your family because of your family's involvement in the kids' marriages, right?
Yes.
Let's talk briefly about your children. The government had asked you, and then the topic of the Jewish faith, keeping kosher. You mentioned a bat mitzvah at one point in time. You're currently planning a bat mitzvah for your oldest, right?
No, it already happened.
Okay, now that is a very, Christopher, I'm obviously not Jewish, but my understanding is that it is a very, very important thing in the Jewish faith.
It's a very important milestone.
And for those that are very conservative in the Jewish faith, those that keep kosher, so to speak, it's even bigger.
I don't know that it's more important to one segment of Judaism over another, but it's an important coming of age ceremony.
It's where a boy becomes a man. Did you invite Dan Markel's parents, the kid's grandparents?
I did.
Here's another whopper. Is it more important to someone who keeps kosher and is extremely faithful? Is your Catholic communion more important to someone who's extremely Catholic than someone who's not? Of course. This is so absurd. What an absurd lie. These things make me crazy. She knows that us Jews are like a tiny, tiny, tiny. I was raised Quaker. I'm 3/4 Jewish. So I was raised in my mom's faith, Quakerism. But she knows that we're like a tiny segment of the population and that most of the jury won't know. When she throws out lies like kosher style and that bar mitzvah isn't more important to a seriously observant Jew, an Orthodox Jew, a very conservative Jew than someone who's not. It's crazy. Tammy says, love the show. Bingo on the hot mic. Georgia's words. Oh, good. I'm glad you think that this might be a good explanation for what she was thinking about.
You invited them.
I invited them, yes.
When was the last time they saw face-to-face their grandchildren?
April 20th,
Of this year?
just now.
And you agree with me that it had been years since 2016, since the last time they had seen them?
The visit stopped when they threatened to put my children in foster care, yes. But up until that point, they did have visits.
But you got no problem letting them see your brother Charles, right?
I'm sorry?
You have no problem letting them hang out with your brother Charles, who's now sitting in custody for first-degree murder.
Well, they can't see him now, can they?
No, they can't, but I'll ask the questions. For years, they weren't able to see their grandchildren despite their pleading to you to see them. But you let me finish, but you let them hang out with your murdering brother, right?
The children were permitted to see their grandparents. I cooked for them. We had play dates. They had sleepovers. When a letter surfaced that they were trying to have my children placed in foster care, the visits stopped. My brother never threatened to put my children in foster care, and if he had, the visits would have stopped with him too.
You say you love your boys.
I do say I love my children.
Don't care about the father that they love. What
I
happened?
never said that I don't care about the father that they
Then
love.
look at some of the discovery and help figure it out.
Excuse me?
Then look at some of the evidence and help figure it out so that more lives aren't ruined by this.
I seem to not
Mr.
understand.
DeCoste, you need to ask a question now. You're making statements now. You need to ask a question.
Understood, Your Honor. If I could have one brief second to check with co-counsel.
He's totally right, though. I mean, I think it's how we all feel. I think he just got frustrated by the end. What he wants to highlight to the jury is what the same reason Robert Adelson, and if you listen to the Over My Dead Body podcast, this is where Robert Adelson talks about this, figuring out that his family, something was very wrong. Is he doesn't go into detail. You have to prick up your ears and really listen. It's in a couple sentences where he's like, figured out that nobody was curious. Nobody wanted to talk about this subject. So I think he came to his own conclusions that they all had the answers. That's why they weren't curious. That's why they weren't asking the questions. That's why they don't want to help, because all roads lead back to the Adelsons. all of them. And I don't think they'll ever be able to prove Harvey did this, was part of it, but I think he was. I think he's a hothead. I think he was left out of a lot of it, but I think he was fully on board and in the planning sessions. I think Donna was left to a lot of the ironing out the details and hiring the repairman to come and repair Wendy's weirdly broken TV that she insisted that they all watch movies on. Broken, so everyone remembers that it's broken. She didn't want it repaired. She didn't want to watch it on a different TV. Her children's treat movie night, according to Jeffrey Lacasse, they all had to watch on a broken TV. I think this frustration, he's trying to tell the jury the reason she doesn't want to help out is because all the trails lead back to her family, her and her family. That's why. That's what he's highlighting, and he's kind of losing it, not asking a question, but that's what he wants the jury to get. Dean Walker, thanks for the super sticker. Nice to see you. Hope the grandbaby is doing well.
Ms. Adelson, we started this by saying that this is all about you. It started with you because of this marriage, right?
No. Well, you had tried to say that, but I don't agree.
Ms. Adelson, I'm going to make one final attempt through questions to implore you. You understand that you can't protect your brother Charles, who's going through this case, and protect yourself at the same time. You understand that, right?
I'm here to share the truth with you. I don't know how to answer the question.
Then please end the madness and share the truth. Will you please share the truth with this jury?
I've been sharing the truth since I walked in here. I've done nothing but share the truth.
You know what happened here, despite your claims to the jury that you haven't looked at anything, you haven't discussed with anybody, and you haven't confronted your brother. You know what happened here, right?
I do not know what happened here. And if I did, I would have shared it with the police 8 years ago.
You know that your brother went behind your back, don't you?
I do not.
Like he always does. This is something that he has always done, isn't it?
Not.
You found out after that your brother had done this and gone behind your back. That's why you were thrown up at that dinner, right?
No, it's not.
You know that it didn't involve Katie either, right?
I don't know anything about
If you're not going to say all of that and finally give the truth, why don't you just admit to this jury that you're guilty?
Because I'm not guilty.
One brief moment.
Now you're not guilty. Bury me in the dress you got for Lickett's bar mitzvah. That's where I was thinking of this. Now you're not guilty. Anybody remember that part? This is the end of this. Pretty sure. Okay, that's. But does anybody remember Donna Adelson's? Let me just pull it up briefly. Boy, I've been making a lot of videos here. Hold on one second. Let me just pull it up. But that's what I always thought that was about. Okay, here we go. It only took 5 hours to pull this up. Get past. Let's get to the good stuff. Your brother protected you for years. Now you're not guilty. Your lawyer took very good care of you. You can bury me in the dress you bought for Lickett's bar mitzvah. So that's because I'm not guilty. I don't know. So I'm going to end the way I end so many of these episodes with a victim impact letter. This is from 2019. To the Honorable James C. Hankinson. Dan Markell and I were friends from around 1996 until his death. I've been friends with his brother-in-law since high school days, and when I moved to Toronto, I was often included in Markell's Shabbat dinners and other holiday celebrations. Dan and I never lived in the same city, and we didn't see each other often, but Dan always made the effort to reach out and stay connected. I happened to meet him when I was making some decisions about a relationship and my job at the time. Dan's capacity for listening and offering sound advice was astounding. His strong values, deep connection with his Jewish identity, incredible intelligence and dedication to his career challenged my acquiescence to my life situation vis-a-vis my career and relationship. His very presence in my life brought out my strengths. I think I could have fallen in love with him if we lived in the same city. Or, as we joked, our styles of travel were similar. I am a backpacker and he is a planner. As many others have attested to, the members of the Markell family are incredibly warm and loyal. Dan's boys were the light of his life and brought great joy to his whole family. They are being deprived of their grandparents, cousins, aunts, uncles, and many friends that make up the fabric of the Markell community. I miss Danny a lot. He brought a perspective to my life that I haven't found in anyone else. I am grateful for the time we spent together and hope this trial brings some peace to him and his family. Sincerely, Julie Christoph, Montreal, Canada. That's what I have for today. Please hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, share this episode, support the channel by becoming a Patreon or a channel member. And I'll be back soon with another episode at 6 p.m. Eastern. Have a terrific night, everyone.
What a stitch you're in. You plotted a murder 'cause you wanted to raise your daughter's kid. Tallahassee is just a stop on the way to civilization. Miami is where all the fancy people are at. The TV is about 5. You can't get away from that. Two-toe, tay-toe, hoo-ho, you know the guy you pay, and you can't get away from that. Oh, Donna, what a stitch you're in. You thought jail was just for the little people, but now you're so blankets with the locked-up crew. You're a grandmother in lockdown, and your one-way ride to freedom you blew. What a stitch you're in. Your family are exiled from the social circles you swam in. We all know you never made that banana bread or offered to babysit sit for Dan, but you'll soon be making license plates and thinking